Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power. It is great to be with you in 2022, the first show of 2022. And I'm excited because today is somebody I always love talking to. And she just is a lot of fun to have these kind of conversations with because of her work and the way she thinks and the way, her insight into startups and business and leadership and growth. And so, the whole point of Power Lunch Live is to talk to today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work in the world and who can help us get better at what we do. And I am not in the studio today, so hopefully we get through this technically. I am on the road as normal. And I think, Alyssa, I think you're not at home either and not in your studio either. So we'll get through this, but it's a great way to start out 2022. And to talk about your book, From Startup to Grown Up, it really, for me, is a way for you to scale your leadership and to scale your growth so that you can be the leader you want to be or you need to be for your business. So this is going to be a great conversation and one I've been looking forward to for a couple months, ever since the book came out. Now, Alisa is a colleague of mine in the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches. She is an executive coach, a leadership coach, startup coach. She's advised founders from executives at Venmo, Etsy, DraftKings, InVision, Tory Burch. She's coached at Dell, Sony, Google, Bloomberg, New York Times. The list goes on and on and on. I think you even coached Tim Ferriss, don't you? So let's an amazing experience, but some of the other things I want to talk about today a little bit, I was going to hopefully maybe get you to rap. I'm surprised you a little bit with that. You're an amateur rap artist. You're an investor in Broadway shows. You've won, I think, 2 of those. I've won Tony Awards. You're just an all-around pretty cool person, cool human. And so it's good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rhett. That is such a delightful opening, and I appreciate what you say, and I think you're a cool person too, so I'm excited to have this conversation.
I think I dated myself when I say the word cool, but maybe younger people don't say that anymore. But anyway. Yeah. So how are you doing?
I'm great.
You been doing all right?
Yeah, I've been doing really well, and it's been a very I had a peaceful New Year's break, and now back at it.
How are you handling the pandemic and the stress of running? I mean, you're running a company, you're trying to do, your coaching and your work. How are you doing with with the pandemic? I don't think we've talked about that in a while. And how are you doing with all that?
Well, thanks for asking. I think after about 2 years of all this, I would just say the word of the day is uncertainty. Right. Yeah. So are we out of the pandemic? Are we still in the pandemic? Is the pandemic coming back? And my personal, antidote to that has been agility. And that is a strong entrepreneurial trait that I have really doubled down on myself. The ability to do 2 things. One is to take and embrace the uncertainty and recognize that you have these plans, they may not happen, and that's going to be okay. But also to recognize that in the chaos and in the uncertainty, there is opportunity, and to be able to be ready with a prepared mind and a prepared, sort of way of being to find the opportunity and capitalize on it.
Was the book, and we're going to get into the book in a minute, but did the book help you was it cathartic to write? Did it help you in any way sort of get through some of your own challenges? Did it help you think through some stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, first of all, even just, I signed my book contract in September 2020. So it was already 6 months into the pandemic, and everybody was kind of like, I guess we're going to be here for a while, right? There was no longer this, 2 weeks and be away. So the process and the structure of writing the book while we were still not traveling, still fully remote, was very, cathartic for me, very powerful, and that I could just kind of be in my zone, in the place I needed to be, and just write my book and be focused, as opposed to all the distraction that normally goes on. And then the process of writing the book, and I think you can probably relate to this too, you don't always know what you think until you say it out loud or you write it down. And so I think for me, it helped me clarify and crystallize some ideas that I hadn't fully formed yet.
Is it, I mean, okay. Did it change your coaching when you did that? I mean, does it change the way you approach coaching? Or the way you think about coaching in any way?
I think it changes. I think that it made me a little more structured as a coach. And I think in, thinking more about, so my book is divided into 3 sections: managing you, managing them, and managing the business. And I think it also encouraged me to think a lot more in a structured way along those dimensions as I coach. But I would also say the book comes from my coaching style. So in some ways, it just clarified and codified what I've been doing for 20 years as a coach.
Okay. So kind of put it on paper.
Yeah.
So, okay. I want to get into, let's get into the book. So I love the way the book really spoke to me, and I'll tell you why. Because I went through this journey with my toy company, and I remember the things that bothered me. I mean, really bothered me, like being broke, being in debt, being up in debt up to my eyeballs during the recession, supply chain challenge, and this process of growth that I had to go through. I remember that just really, really well. It's one of the things that really stands out to me is the things that bothered me in month 1, year 1, that didn't bother me in year 5. That I had matured and gotten more confident in my leadership, gotten more confident that I could solve that problem. So to me, this was a really, I wish I'd had this book, 15 years, 16 years ago. Dadgummit, you should have written it, But what made you believe you had to write the book?
Well, I kept walking into situations and I would say, so how often do you meet with your leadership team? And they would say, what's a leadership team? Or they would have a problem with an executive and they'd be saying, the executive's not doing it. I said, well, did you hire the executive to do that job? And it turned out there was probably a lot of issues in the hiring and onboarding process. So I kept thinking, I wish I had a book so I could hand them that they could avoid unforced errors. And so now I have this book.
There it is.
There it is, that I can hand them, right? That will help people understand in advance both what it takes personally, like the personal transformation that you were talking about, to start and run and build a business. And then also what it takes from the point of view of the tools and tactics and skills that they need to be able to effectively manage and lead other people and build a thriving business. Because people don't think about that when they get involved with entrepreneurship.
No, not at all. I mean, that's kind of the furthest thing from your mind, right?
Yeah.
What's the best way? I mean, one of the things in the book you talk about is feedback. What's the best way where you can get real feedback?
Or for someone to get real feedback, or to be able to give feedback?
To get it. I mean, I kind of felt like, thinking back on my time, running a company and stuff, and actually before that, even when I was in executive management, you're not always going to get real feedback from people,
right?
Or truthful feedback. Maybe truthful is not the right word, but
meaningful.
Yeah, meaningful. There you go. Good word.
So the best way to do that actually is, like, step 1 is to recognize and resolve that you want meaningful feedback and that you're going to do what it takes to get it. That's actually really important because, to your point, most people are squeamish about giving you feedback. Most people don't want to rock the boat. They don't know how you're going to respond. Also, they're not thinking about you. Many, many, many reasons that people are not going to give you meaningful performance feedback that's going to help you get ahead. That's how I define meaningful. So number 1, you've got to say, my intention and resolution is to get meaningful performance feedback. Number 2, if you don't have a coach, I mean, as a coach, I go and ask people do 360 feedback. And I say, what needs to change for this person to get ahead and to get promoted? And if you don't have a coach, you can ask people around you yourself, trusted peers, your managers and leaders. And you could say, I'm really trying to add more value and have more impact and ultimately get promoted so I can have a wider footprint. What are a couple of things that I need to be aware of to help me do that? Now they're going to say, oh, no, you're great. Keep doing what you're doing. You can say, well, okay, Thank you. Right. And be very important to me to get this feedback because I can't change what I can't see. So either now or you could think about it. I would love to be open to, and I would love to know what specific things that you think that I need to do to, be, get ahead or get promoted or need to know about. And the last thing is that rather than ask for feedback, ask for suggestions. What is one suggestion you have for me to make me an even more effective leader? People can handle that a lot better sometimes than the notion of feedback.
I like that. And it's sort of reframing it, right?
Yes.
So when you get this feedback, I mean, one of the things I find the hardest, right, is when you do get feedback, how do you take it? Like, and how do you keep your mind in the right place to take that feedback?
Yeah.
And not make it personal, not make it, not put you in some sort of negative headspace when you get that.
I know it's so hard because on the one hand, you want and need feedback. On the other hand, we are naturally defensive and self-protective. So that's very difficult. So the strategy I like the best is, well, actually two strategies. One is watch it like it's a movie, right? To give yourself a little distance from it. Like, that's so interesting.
How do you do that? How do you do that though?
Well, you've got to put yourself in the mindset of that, right? So you've got to really think about there's a character in this movie that wants to get promoted. We can all see why that person's not getting promoted, but that person can't see it themselves. Wouldn't it be great if someone would tell them, right? So it's kind of like you relate to it like that, gives you a little bit of an emotional space around it. And then the second is to, I guess I would say sort of similarly, think about it as if this were your best friend and you really wanted for their good, how would you want them to take this feedback that you're giving them from the goodness of your heart? And so those are some strategies to help you think about how you should receive feedback. Also, if you get defensive, that's normal. If you get, sort of armored and negative and even feeling self-criticized, that's normal. So how do you then talk to yourself? What's your internal talk track to help you take in this feedback, to get calmer and then take action on it? And part of that has to do, again, with treating yourself like your best friend and recognizing and thinking, this feedback is a gift because I can make a change. And if I can't make a change, I'll be stuck in this gear for the next 10 years and I'll never get ahead. And I want to get ahead. So therefore, right, you sort of talk yourself into it in that kind of a way. At the end of the day, Rhett, nothing's personal.
So you're right. And I think that's one of the hardest things is to sort of remove yourself. I know for me, not take it personally, right? To sort of put it at a distance and say, okay, this is, so that's hard. Maybe easier said than done, but I think that's the most productive and I think useful way to do it. And maybe the best way to try to sort of distance yourself from it and not make it personal. But boy, that's hard.
It's really hard, but you get to practice. It's like any muscle, right? You get to practice.
And necessary, right?
Yes.
It's necessary for, I mean, do you think you can make it or be a successful leader without doing that?
No, I really don't, because none of us are perfect. The very first opening line of my book is, leadership is an unnatural act, which means,
that's right.
Which means we are not naturally inclined to even give feedback to other adults, praise somebody even when they screwed up, right? Fire your friend, right? These are unnatural things. Even delegate when you know you can do it yourself much better. These are unnatural acts. Therefore, leadership by definition is learned behavior. So just like all of this, right? You have blind spots, you have to grow. You said it yourself, and it's so true that you have to grow as a leader. Grow by definition means learning and changing. And to do that, you need to kind of make mistakes and have others weigh in on how you're showing up for other people.
How do, I mean, is there, let's say you're trying to, you're at a mid-level management position or something like that. How do you go about, you mentioned it earlier. You go to your manager and you say, I want to grow. How do you do that without pushing their buttons or offending them or because I think that could be off-putting. Or you put them on the defensive by saying,
Totally.
I want to get promoted. How do you do that?
Totally. So first of all, with everything you're ever trying to do, know your audience. So if you don't have that kind of manager who's open to these kinds of thoughts, you might want to find a separate way. However, starting point is know your audience, build your relationship with your manager by adding value, by being a great employee, by asking about how your manager is doing, right? Having a personal relationship and not just being so super transactional. And then also getting to know their mindset, getting to know their own triggers, getting to know what they like and what they don't like. That's kind of the first step with anything. It's sort of building that rapport and figuring out who they are and also delivering value. Then the second is find the right time. Maybe they're if they're middle of their day and they've got a million things on their mind, you kind of spring it on them. Not a great idea. Maybe you want to send an email in advance saying, hey, next time we have a one-on-one, I'd love to talk to you about my career. Because I think my career is always a good access point into, getting feedback, or it might even simply be an email saying, you'd love to get some feedback from you about how I can advance and kind of how you see my career playing out, that kind of a thing.
I like that question. Right.
Yeah, it could also just be in a one-on-one when you're feeling kind of relaxed, or even over lunch one day, bringing it up and not putting someone on the spot being like, tell me right now. Could just be, might be something we could talk about over the next few weeks, months, but just know that I'm open to these questions or open to this feedback and opportunity. And I'd love to know your point of view.
Maybe take a more long-term view of it, right?
Definitely.
Show that you're in for the long term and that
definitely. Yeah. And keeping an excellent employee, which is also important.
Yeah. Making their job easier,
totally.
Being the one that is dependable and that they can count on.
Definitely. Yeah.
Talk about closing the loop a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Tell me what you mean that I mean by that.
I mean, you're a believer in like closing the loop on feedback and on issues. So
yeah,
talk about that a little bit and why that's in terms of communication and feedback and
yeah. So when I think about closing the loop, what I think it has to do with, I think that a lot of things get kind of like open-ended, as in like, that's a great idea. We should do that. Yeah, we should do that. Totally. Let's do that. And then it's like, okay, so now what? Right? So I think a lot about after we have a conversation, do we both agree we had the same conversation and the same action? So how do we close the loop on that? And sometimes that is in the meeting, let's decide this. Okay, good. Who'll do what by when? Okay, good. Fantastic. Sometimes it's a follow-up email, like, just so you know, I did the thing that we talked about doing, or just so you know, I took these changes. I think it's powerful because then everyone knows message sent equals message received. But I also think about meetings, right? So everyone hates meetings. I love meetings. I love meetings because there's such potential for like great things to happen. But I think people miss because they don't always know the goals of the meeting or how we're going to execute on this. And people make these decisions and never have them. So when I think about closing the loop on meetings, I have 3 questions to end the meeting. What did we decide here? Who else needs to know? And who will do what by when? So if you can answer those 3 questions at the end of the meeting, you probably had an effective meeting.
Sorry, I don't know. They're doing some construction out here for some. They're doing something outside, so I'm muting you. But no, I like that. I like the way that concludes sort of and wraps up everything. And says, I love those 3 questions. I'm going to have to steal those.
Feel free.
What for you? Are there sort of some of the common opportunities for growth when you think about scaling your leadership, scaling your and changing from that startup to the CEO? What are some other common areas for growth that you think?
Well, definitely, if I think about my book, From Startup to Grown Up, being divided into 3 sections: managing you, managing them, and then managing the business. The opportunities are in managing you, figuring out your natural swing as a leader, making sure that you get others' input and sort of 360 feedback in terms of how message sent equals message received, right? If your intention is aligning with your impact, And the third is around managing your own psychology as a leader. There's a lot of ups and downs in the world of startups, for sure. And you need to be able to be in it for the long term and recognize that even when the downs are down, you need to be able to have different strategies to reduce your severe self-doubt, keep going even though it's hard, deal with the fact that you don't always know if you're making progress, merchandise progress for your team, right? All those kinds of things in managing you. That's a rich, rich ways of growing, even just like the self-awareness of all that, and then taking steps to really build your traits to be a better leader from that point of view.
What do you mean by merchandising progress for your team?
What I mean is that when you're in a startup, you really don't know if you're winning, because it's a long journey. It's a 7-year journey, a 10-year journey, a 12-year journey to like have some sort of success, IPO or acquisition or something. In the middle of all that, you're mostly having bad moments. You have plenty of good moments, right? So what founders say to me is that I knew there'd be ups and downs, but I didn't realize it would be like in the same 5 minutes, right? We lost this big customer, but we just hired this incredible executive, like that is like at the same time. So if you're feeling that way, your team who are trying to push a rock uphill by creating a category, by selling something that's never been sold, by figuring out a whole bunch of things and making mistakes, they feel regularly kind of daunted. So you as a leader, to motivate people, the most motivational thing in the world for people is to making progress. They often don't feel like they're making progress because the conditions are hard to tell if you're making progress. So you've got to step in, and your leaders have to step in to show them, here's where you are. Here's how it affects and goes to like kind of the bigger picture, how it impacts the goal we're trying to do. And also, here's how far you've come. It's not perfect, work left to do, but it's amazing how far you've come. That's how you merchandise progress for people, so they have something to celebrate and kind of they live to fight another day. Uh-oh, are you still on mute?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is
no, you can't. I can't hear it.
I'm good. It's not good for my ADD because it's like bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
But so for you, in your coaching, and in writing this book, what are some daily things that people can do to be more connected, to be more? There's some things you talked about the reflection ritual a little bit, but what are some? Let's talk about that a little bit. But then I want to get into some other daily activities people can do.
Yeah, so I think daily activities are to check in with yourself really quick, morning, noon, and right after work, to really sort of think what energized me today, what's amazing, and then what gets in my way, what sort of de-energized me. Now, if you keep tracking those things, you'll kind of figure out what energizes me and then what de-energizes me and what should I do about that. So that's very helpful. Also, getting it on paper kind of gets it out of your head and into the world, and that's also very cathartic in a way. Another really great daily ritual, though, is for you to make sure that you're offering people, your direct reports, the other employees, you as the leader. It's so powerful when you offer praise to other people. It's back to making progress. People want to feel like they're doing a good job. People want to feel like they're making progress. And what we always forget to sort of just tell them the mundane, elements of like, hey, that was a great meeting you led. Or, hey, that was a really good report you put together. And it was very instructive to all of us, and we used it to make decisions. And people, it's like sort of routine, so people don't think about saying it. But if you say that to your people, you'll create a higher morale environment and a higher kind of win-focused environment. People are celebrating success over time. Also, people will simply be more motivated because they think that their work matters and they feel seen. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I want to talk to you about one of the most challenging parts of being a founder, and that is your team. And we've talked a lot about the team and today a little bit, but when your team doesn't grow or how do you bring your team along with this in this growth? How do you, because we all get to the stage in our companies where we've had people that have been with us for a while, maybe from the beginning, and they don't fit into where the company's going.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit, and how you sort of make those changes, and how do you do it the best way?
I know it's really hard because people who are with you when you were 8 people or 20 people may not be the executives for you when you're 100 people or 500 people.
They're
That's just
often
like
not.
life, right? That's different people. They haven't done it before. You've probably earned the right to hire better executives and more seasoned executives. So for all those reasons, it's a natural state. Honestly, the best way to do it is have a straight talk conversation with people at the beginning of their tenure, which is, listen, I think you're amazing. I'm so glad you're joining us. And I think your value is going to be that you're going to help us get to the next level. And I hope you do. And when that happens, it's possible that I might bring in another executive who's done this before to hire them over you to help us get to where we really need to be, which is better for the company overall. But I promise you this, if I do that, I will find the right person to help you build your own skills and mentor you so that ultimately, whether you stay here or leave, you'll be able to lead the function in the future, right? That's really important to me. Your growth is really important to me. And then over time, as you do grow, I think it's really important to say, listen, 18 months from now, I'm expecting you to be able to do this, this, and this. And I'd love to see you grow. How can I help you? And there's also like, why don't you go and get mentors, right? What books are you reading to help you grow to that stage of executive that you need to be 18 months from now? People, when they're given that challenge and that guidance, can sometimes make it. And if they can't, at least you gave them a chance.
Right. You set them up for that, right? You told them all along that, and there's no surprise, right? And you gave them the challenge. Maybe you even got them a coach, gave them some, send them back to school, whatever it is they needed.
Right.
Right. I think that's a really fair. I think that's a really fair way to do it. But that often results in some tough conversations. How do you have those tough conversations when that's working out?
In my book, From Startup to Grown Up, I have in the appendix 14 scripts for delicate conversations and difficult conversations that specifically relate to how do you layer on top of somebody? How do you give difficult feedback? How do you have one-on-ones? How do you have career conversations with people who you don't know what they're doing? How do you handle conflict? How do you deliver bad news? And all of them start with my two religions, right? One is straight talk, as in you just got to tell them, right? You can't avoid, you can't sugarcoat, you got to tell them clearly. And the second is to think about your listener. So that might be with compassion with somebody that you're going to fire, and then you have to tell them straight to you have to take their job, as was once said, take their job, but you have to take their dignity, and you can do that with compassion. With bad news, you need to deliver the bad news, but also nested inside of why we're still going to win. If you're going to give difficult feedback, it really relates to being clear about the feedback, but also explaining why you're giving it, which is to make you better. I wouldn't waste my breath if I wasn't trying to make you better. And so that's to me, the framework that helps you with tough conversations.
How much did you cringe when with this Zoom firing a couple weeks
ago?
Yeah,
well, that was the second Zoom firing, actually, right? Trip Actions was the first Zoom firing.
Right.
Yeah.
What was your thought on that? How did that go so badly, and how could they have done that better?
Rhett, you and I were both at Web Summit in Lisbon, and I talked to a founder at Web Summit, and she knew the Trip Actions folks, and I said, "What do you think about that?" Because it was the same thing that you're talking about with better.com, and she said, "I can see how that would have happened." And I think that is important. So what did I think about it? I think that someone should have given him different advice. I think that he should have approached it a different way. I think he should have thought about it from the point of view of the listener. There's a lot of things, but I have compassion because in the fog of war, sometimes you make bad decisions. And unfortunately, that was a very public bad decision. And I think everybody should reflect on what maybe went wrong there, which was thinking too much about what I need to do in a hurry and not thinking about the human beings on the other side of that action.
When you spoke to that person in Lisbon about that, though, when you said, I can see how that happened, I instantly went to, well, was she or he or she wasn't surprised. Is that a culture? So that speaks maybe to the culture there, or to
No,
the,
no, it wasn't that they weren't surprised. It was that I can see how in the fog of war,
you make,
bad decisions get made,
okay,
right? I, as a founder, have at times made sort of bad decisions where if I step back, I think like, oh, how did I make that decision? But the answer is in the thick of it, you sometimes, kind of go off the rails.
yeah, no, I've done that. I've made
Yeah.
many bad decisions. So I
Yeah.
just want, but I wonder, who was thinking, who was guiding that. I mean, who
Yeah.
was there any outside advice? Did anybody step up and say, hey, maybe this isn't a great idea?
Right.
But sort of to go back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, I kind of got off on that. But layering, you mentioned layering in
Yeah.
your when you talked about the appendix to the book. Talk about layering a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Well, layering has to do with bringing in a leader or manager on top of
Right.
the leader or manager you have there. And so it has to do with bringing somebody who's probably done this before, more experienced,
Right.
can lead the team to a certain outcome where the person there hasn't either demonstrated that or may not have the capacity for that. So that's what layering is. And it's important to know that you often have to layer people. That is a normal part of actually any business and any professional growth, certainly in startup world.
Okay. I just want to clarify what you meant by that. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, this has been fun. I could talk more and more, and I could talk for an hour or more on this, but I know we have to wrap up. But what anything you want to, any final comment you want to leave on it, or any thoughts that maybe I didn't ask today, or things that people should know about the book?
Well, I would just say this about what people should know about the book. It's really about the growth of anybody as a leader. And it's about the growth, certainly, of entrepreneurs, but really any leadership person. Actually, I gave this talk at Google because someone said, did ever all managers should read this book. And then actually I got an email from a dentist who said, all doctors and dentists should read this book. I was like, wow, not my target audience, but okay,
Okay.
great. I agree. Yes. So it's really about that personal growth journey. Also that it has a really practical point of view so that when you read it, you get practical tools in every chapter. And then you also get these scripts at the end. In addition, last thing I would say is that on my website, alisacohn.com, you get you can download 5 additional scripts for delicate and difficult conversations, and you can also join my newsletter list.
There you go. Now, I think the scripts are probably worth buying the book as it is, because I don't know. I think we often avoid and we also often avoid difficult conversations, right? We put them off.
Totally.
I'll do that later, or it'll sort itself out, or we try to bury our head in the sand sometimes and not face some of the things that we have to face. And I think those scripts are really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Rhett. I love this. Thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, sorry for the construction if you could hear it,
Can't hear it.
or if you could in the audience, but was not aware they were going to do that today. But thank you so much. This is really helpful, and I think this book is just really worth your time to read and to learn from. And thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for being here today.
Yeah, the book is called From Startup to Grown Up. You can get it on Amazon, but can you also get it off the website? There it is. Thank you.
You can get it off the website from the point of view if you can go to my website and then click on Amazon. There's a link to it from there. So it's www.alisacohn.com.
We'll put that up there, and we'll put that on the notes here when this goes live online, and we'll put your website up there too. So
thank you
so much. And again, From Startup to Grown Up, get your copy at Amazon.com. Very much worth your time. And we didn't get to your rapping or to your Tony Awards or
next time.
You don't want to leave us with a rap? I won't make you do that. But anyway, thank you, Alisa.
Thanks, Rhett.